yodeled a couple episodes
Hello?
ago, so I'll breathily sing into the microphone.
Sexual.
Hey, I'm Amy.
And I'm Whitney.
And we are on the haunt.
We haven't done that in the last couple. We're off. We're just off.
No, I think we did in the last one. We didn't do it in the first one.
Maybe we did. I don't know.
Anyways, welcome to our silly little podcast.
It's silly.
Is anyone still there?
Silly little thing.
We ostracized
We just listen.
everyone.
We just listen to our own podcast.
I
We're the
don't
only
even
ones.
do that.
Me neither. I do occasionally.
I do sometimes.
If I think it was
But,
especially funny.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like, I'm embarrassed. Anyway, follow our socials. We're on Twitter. We're on TikTok. We're on
Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
On thehauntpodcast.com.
Yep.
Order our
Check
merch.
it out. We've got shirts and all kinds of cool stuff. Stickers for your laptop or your water bottle.
Or your car. Wherever you
Your
like
car.
to put. Wherever you like to
Put
put
it on your
stickers.
car so people can
put it on your forehead. That'd be funny.
You get so progressive. This is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've been in this room now
for so long.
We're so hot.
She picked me up at my house 3 hours ago.
Yeah.
We're just dying.
We're dying. We are hungry.
Yes. Waiting on old Jimmy Jones.
Oh,
Okay,
Lord.
we got nothing to talk about because we just talked
go.
it all out. I'm just gonna go. So
we'll talk about stupid
This
things.
is long. This is I'm back to science encyclopedia. My other articles were 5,000 words. This is 15,000.
Oh my God.
Whatever.
Who wrote this?
So buckle in, everybody.
I'm buckled.
So the authors are the Society for Cyclical Research and Melchior Jala. What a name. So this is actually a translation
Oh.
of the full text of a pamphlet published by Melchior Jala, who lived from 1818 to 1865.
Have you said what your topic
This is called Stan's Switzerland Poltergeist.
Okay, I'm going to have to wait and write that down afterwards.
Well, it just says Stans, like Stans, and then Switzerland in parentheses, Poltergeist. So, again, this is a pamphlet. So this is just word for word. So it's saying the authors are the Society for Cyclical Research, but they just published it. This is like this guy's thing. And he dead, so he ain't going to come after me for using his stuff. So here we go. This has been published all over the place in different languages, but thank goodness they've translated it to English for me because I speak no other languages because I'm a typical
Swedish,
selfish American who thinks I don't need to learn other. I would love to learn another language.
We should try Babbel, that app.
Is that the one where you play the games?
Maybe.
No, or is that Duolingo?
I don't know. Babbel,
There's
I think,
one
is
where you
on
play games.
TCO. That's where I've heard of it. I don't.
There's one where you play games, and I tried it for a while, but it just made me feel stupid because they talk about how easy it is, how quickly you learn a language, and I'm like, I can't. I'm
just conjugating those verbs in Spanish.
I'm not winning these. I was doing French.
Oh,
it was whatever. Okay, so here we go. No one cares. Jala was a distinguished citizen, lawyer, journalist, and member of the National Council, which was the lower house of Parliament. He lived in a substantial house, inherited from his parents, with his wife, 4 sons, and 3 daughters, and 1 or more maids. Beginning in 1860, Jala heard of incidents involving ghostly shapes and rapping noises reported by members of the household, but paid little attention to them. Well, maybe you should have listened, Melchior. It's a great name. The phenomena began in earnest in August of 1882, and although Jala at first refused to believe what he was hearing, he eventually started to experience the rapping noises for himself. Thorough investigation failed to reveal the cause. The phenomena escalated in frequency, variety, and strength over the next few weeks. Windows and doors slammed repeatedly, furniture was hurled about, stones were thrown, there were ghostly noises and footsteps, apparitional forms were sometimes seen. The repeated disturbances attracted the attention of newspaper reporters, and the house and its occupants became the center of public gossip, scandal, and ridicule. Rude. In October, the family fled to Zurich, never to return. Jala himself died 3 years later, his career and reputation ruined. The narrative begins with a description of the house paraphrased below. The rest of the text is given in full. So the ground floor was not a living space, but used as a sort of all-purpose outhouse for laundry, dairy, wine press, and such like.
Okay. Who says that?
Yeah, right? And none of those things are related. So, and such like is just leaving me hanging. It was enclosed by thick brick or stone walls with few windows. The rest of the house was of wood and rested on these foundations. Outside steps led up to the front door on the first floor, where there was a porch, a hallway leading to the main living room, the kitchen, and a pantry, a bedroom, and a small corridor leading to a bathroom. The second floor contained Joller's study and 4 bedrooms linked by a corridor. The attic space included an upstairs living room, a drawing room, 2 small bedrooms, one occupied by a maidservant, and some storage space. So here we are. I'm assuming this is kind of like this, almost like his journal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're starting with autumn 1860. Oh, autumn, my favorite time of year.
Same.
1860, not such a great time.
No.
It was first noticed, as far as we could recall, not knowing what it was at the time, by our housemaid around the beginning of autumn 1860. She slept in a third-floor attic room above the bedchambers, and one morning she told us she had heard and felt a distinct knocking on her bedhead during the night. She was sure it meant someone in the house was about to die. I rebuked her for this superstition and told her firmly to keep such things to herself. Rude.
Oh, gosh.
Putting the knocking down to a hallucination, although she stuck absolutely to her conviction. The matter was soon forgotten. The more so, everyone remained perfectly well. Returning from a business trip a few weeks later, my wife told me that she and our second daughter, Melanie, had experienced something extraordinary that night. Shortly after going to bed, they were woken by a rapid knocking on the table next to the bed and wondered what on earth it could be. As they were talking, the knocking began again. Some 10 to 15 quick blows that started strong and gradually faded. Ugh. Astonishment now changed to fear. They demanded it knock if it had something to communicate, at which it replied in the same way. They were terrified and waited in dread for the morning. That would be me.
Oh my God, yeah.
They too were inclined to see it as a warning of something to come, and were strengthened in this idea by the death of a female friend some days later.
Oh my God.
Personally, I was sure the cause would be found in the complicated construction of the table, perhaps the loosening of a joint, as I could not begin to imagine how an inanimate object could make knocks.
Yeah.
So he's being the skeptic.
Typical.
Don't like the way you talk to your housemaid, and don't believe your wife or daughter. Is it because they're women? Melchiah? So now we're in 1861. A striking incident occurred at the beginning of June 1861 involving my second youngest son, Oscar, then 9 years old, tough and fearless. One evening, he went into a little kitchen room on the 3rd floor. Or is it just a kitchen? What's a kitchen room? I'm so confused by homes in the 1800s.
A little tiny kitchen room.
Little kitchen room. You have your little table.
Weird.
Little fork. Sorry, my sock just fell off. Oh, if I'd have just kept reading, it would have told me.
Kept reading.
Well, we're at the 3rd episode where words don't work for me anymore.
It's all downhill.
So he went into the little kitchen room on the 3rd floor, which at the time was used to store logs.
What?
Well, for like I'm sure they had to burn wood for to cook their food.
It's terrible.
As he didn't turn up for supper, we went to look for him and eventually found him lying on the pile of logs in a deep swoon.
What?
I don't know what that means.
That's not what I thought swoon meant.
Oh, swoon.
And you're lying on a bunch of logs? Yeah. It's terrible. Lie on the floor.
I don't know. That seems real uncomfortable and very cumbersome.
Yes.
It was some considerable time before we could bring him round. When he was able to speak, he told us that shortly after entering the room, there had been 3 knocks on the door. He paid them little attention, but then suddenly the door opened and a white, formless shape came in, at which he passed out. I took this to be an effect of the imagination, following from the frightening knocks, which themselves could have quite a natural origin. And once the boy had recovered, we gave no more thought to it. So ignore it, no, go away kind of mentality.
Oh, the 1800s.
Around this time, the boys who slept in the bedroom above the first floor living room complained they often heard a noise at night, as if something was in the upstairs living room or hallway above them knocking on the floor.
There's so much knocking.
There's a lot of knocking. I recalled later that they called me into their bedroom one day to hear this odd knocking, and I really did hear something that sounded like a dog scratching with its foot on the door. So I went upstairs, but found the door closed and could not discover the cause, either in the room or anywhere else. I told the boys it was doubtless something to do with cats, rats, or a bird on the roof. After this, the disturbance was often heard, but no longer heeded. Again, I was firmly in the view that such noises could be traced to quite natural causes. And as the noises tailed off, I remembered having frequently heard something similar in my study during the day, perhaps for the past 2 years even. In the late summer, the housemaid complained that in the evenings when she was in the kitchen, cleaning shoes on the stairs. God, what a terrible job.
And on the stairs? She's just sitting on them, maybe?
As she often did, she was frightened at seeing gray forms downstairs in the dark on the ground floor. One of them once even came up to where she was sitting and then vanished.
Oh.
Yikes. Like, listen, it's bad enough I'm cleaning shoes for a living. Can you not torment me, spirits?
Come up in her face?
Yeah. Then one morning, she claimed that during the night, someone had gone up the stairs, past her room on the 3rd floor, and onto the stairs leading to the upstairs living room. From there, her name was called distinctly several times. Then it went up and down the stairs 3 times and finally entered the living room, where she heard a deep sobbing that went on for the longest time.
Ugh.
My wife told her not to talk about such imaginary things to the children, and personally, I considered her to be the most superstitious person. Shortly afterwards, this was still in August, my youngest daughter, Henriette, then around 11 years old, found herself alone one sunny afternoon in her bedroom, which was situated above the main living room. She was preparing for exams. At 11? Again, the 1800s, barf.
I know. I'm also imagining this man writing all of this with like a quill.
I know, so
Oh my
tedious.
gosh.
So she was studying for exams, leaning by an open window with her face buried in a school book. Looking up, she saw a cheerful-looking child coming towards her, half-clothed.
What?
At first,
What?
she took him for her little brother. Well, I'm assuming maybe without a shirt on.
Oh.
But then the form changed aspect and suddenly disappeared right in front of her. What? This terrified her and she ran from the room. I learned about the incident only some days later when I was trying to get Henriette to tell me why she wouldn't go into the living room on her own. However, I managed eventually to reassure her by persuading her it was just her imagination. In October, we decided we would manage the housework on our own in the future, and accordingly, the housemaid was dismissed and her place taken by a 13-year-old girl for basic duties.
Oh my god.
So you weren't taking care of the household on yourself.
No.
You fired this lady and brought in a 13-year-old.
13 years old.
So now we're at 1862.
Okay.
I don't even know what year we go to here. Sorry. This may go on till the 1900s. I don't know. From now until the summer of the following year, we don't remember noticing anything unusual. However, at this time, the 2 boys who slept in the room overlooking the garden told me they often heard a strong scratching on the wall. Also upstairs at night, a distinct coming and going could be heard that sounded like a big dog, as well as knocking here and there on the floor and walls. My insistence that all of this had been a natural cause managed to keep fear from the children until Assumption Day, August 15th. I don't know what Assumption Day is.
Some sort of
Are
holiday.
you making assumptions about stuff? I don't know. Is it like a religious holiday?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
I think it's a Christian holiday for like some sect. I don't know.
Okay. Where you just make assumptions? That sounds about right. Sorry. Sorry.
Assumption Day. I'll write that down as a possible top.
Do you get to consume things? Can it be Assumption/Consumption Day? Because then I might. Because I feel like when I drink a lot, then I do start making assumptions that I'm funny. But I'm not.
Or a good dancer.
Yes, or a good dancer with my arms.
She's an arm dancer.
I am. I had business.
Never forget the first time I saw your arms come out.
Listen.
I was like,
It
wow.
was
Look
then
at
that you knew.
Look at those
Friends
things.
forever.
Look at those things going.
Yeah. They're so long.
They move in so many directions.
All right, so Assumption Day, the 15th of August. I had business to attend in Lucerne and set out around 7 in the morning with my wife and eldest son Robert, returning home very late. On the following morning, my children wanted to tell me about some unusual incidents that had shocked and frightened them through the whole day. Without really listening to them,
Sounds
I
about right.
rebuked them for their superstitious fear and hinted that I would take a rod to their backsides if I heard any more silly.
Rod?
Spare the rod, spoil the child. So apparently they really did use rods.
My God.
Ouch. My grandma used to have a paddle with a pillow on it. It was
For the butt part?
It was a grandparent pillow or paddle. Get it?
Oh.
Grandma will spank you with a
this
pillow.
Oh, Eloise.
Not my mom though. She'd make me pick the switch off the tree that she'd break off, a nice ripe one. I'd always try to find something dead that would crumble.
Also hurt.
But also hurt.
It's
If
like
nothing
sharp.
else, my feelings. Also, don't hit people. Like, never. It's not okay. I've never once hit my children, and they're very well behaved. I don't know why I said behave like that. Behaved. Like, they're good kids. So anyways, reluctantly they withdrew, muttering that father would not believe anything. From now on, nothing of the kind was said in front of me, and it was only later, when I myself had become convinced that something was going on, that I found out what happened. Here it is, as accurately as I can make it. During the course of the morning, 14-year-old Melanie was alone with the housemaid when she mentioned that her younger sister, Henriette, often heard a peculiar knocking on the wall of the bathroom. So the two of them went there to look. Henriette came by at that moment and confirmed what she had said. But Melanie couldn't hear anything and wouldn't believe it, calling out loudly, "In God's name, if something is there, come out and knock." Melanie ain't got time for y'all's crap. She's like 13 and got to work.
She has to study.
Yes, and clean the shoes on the stairs.
She's the
probably.
cleaner, yeah.
I don't know.
Poor thing.
And or no, Melanie's their daughter. Maybe I don't know.
It's
I'm
hard
so
to keep
confused.
track.
It really.
It doesn't matter. She's either cleaning or studying. That's all kids
Yes,
did.
that's
Okay?
it. There's no or got
fun.
hit with a rod.
Right.
And immediately there was knocking, like someone rapping with his knuckles. Then Oscar turned up and, hearing what had happened, made the same demand. And again, it immediately answered with the same knocking. When their older brother Edward heard what was going on, he too rushed up and made the same request, and for the third time it gave the same answer. Terrified, they flew headlong out of the house and sat at the bottom of the front steps. At this point, an oval stone, roughly the size of a fist, flew between Melanie and the youngest boy, Alfred, who was standing quite near to her, however, without hurting either of them. After a while, they plucked up enough courage to go back in and get their lunch, finding all the cupboard doors in the downstairs living room and chamber, big and small, wide open. They closed them and went into the kitchen, from where they saw that the door of my study was also standing open. They closed it and took out the key, but soon it was standing wide open again. Thinking it might be because of an air current, they closed the windows and shut the doors firmly, then stood by the front door to see whether it would open again. Nothing happened, but the moment they turned to go, the door stood wide open.
Isn't that interesting?
It is.
It's messing with you.
Yeah, totally messing with them. Again, they closed it. Now they clearly heard the muffled steps of someone coming down the stairs.
Ugh.
Then the bedroom
I've heard
door
that.
opened again.
I've had that happen.
Ugh, yuck. No. They closed it and bolted it, but the moment their backs were turned, it opened again. As things were getting even more peculiar, they again left the house.
Yeah.
It was time for lunch, so the maid went back into the kitchen.
Oh, they're like, don't make us lunch!
Yeah, like, no. Go. You can go without eating for one day.
Right.
You're not going to die. Looking towards the corridor, she thought she saw someone hanging a sheet from one corner down the stairs from the upstairs banister.
What?
Observing more closely, it seemed to be rounded off at the top with two long black marks at the bottom, like the tips of 2 feet.
Oh, so it's like a ghost with a sheet
Yeah.
on its head.
Shocked, she called out, "Who's there?" with a sound like, "Whoa." The form suddenly vanished.
What?
At which the girl went white and stumbled outside screaming. W-U-H is what's in quotation marks. So like, what?
Weird.
My oldest daughter, Emmeline, now came home, and the maid had recovered sufficiently to fetch the meal from the kitchen quickly and bring it out. So poor lady. Okay, I've recuperated. Let me go get your ham sandwich.
Oh my God.
The children ate in the garden under the hazelnut tree, something which rarely happened. Just as the maid was taking the dishes back into the kitchen and she was going through the porch, she saw and heard the doors and windows in my room, the terrace and garden rooms, and the door leading to the veranda, as well as the corridor, all suddenly spring open together. The opening of the windows was also seen by the children from under the tree. After quickly washing up, the girl ran outside again. God, she still had to do the freaking dishes. Can you imagine?
They just keep...
Now the children hung around the barn, where my workers were busy with the hay harvest, creeping every so often toward the house to see what was going on. They almost always heard noises, even from the barn some 40 or 50 steps away. Once the maid and Edward ventured up the steps from where they could see through the window into the living room, which, like the two windows underneath, again stood open, despite having been bolted from inside. As they looked, they saw a chair slide of its own accord from its place, and then in a flash turned upside down with its legs in the air. Everyone standing below heard the commotion and sprang away in terror. Another time, standing in front of the house, they clearly heard through the open bedroom window a deep groaning voice say in tones of unbearable melancholy, "Even when no one at all is around," with heavy emphasis on the word all.
What?
So even when no one at all is around.
And it's like then
God,
what?
I still have to open the windows and the doors? I don't know.
What's the second part of your sentence?
From the barn, the children kept seeing formless shapes moving around my room. Later, when can you imagine? I'm like,
I'm not going
we
back in
live there. Yikes. Can I move to the barn, please? Later, when Melanie was standing at the western corner of the house and Edward was by the well, halfway between the house and the barn, they heard a peculiar music appearing to come from the upstairs living room. A melancholy voice, accompanied by a single toned string, was whimpering a slow movement with the tune of Camille's Prayer in Zampa. I don't know what that is. No. Eventually, my tenant's wife, they lived with their 3 small children in an outside annex, came by, so they asked her to go inside with them to help find out what was going on. There on the 3rd floor in front of the grindstone, they discovered a little snow white picture, so like a death's head in the smallest detail that an engraver could not have bettered it. It was no bigger than, I don't know what any of that means.
No.
It was no bigger than a small coin and looked as if it had been poured on.
What?
They scrutinized it at length. The eye holes were deeply set, and from one side it was shaded blue, appearing to grin at them. The nose bone and the apertures were sharply represented, as were 2 teeth in the jaw. They could not see what the picture was made of. However, shortly it grew darker and lost its shape. Now they heard a big commotion in the rooms and went outside again. As they were gathered together under a tree, an old crone hobbled up.
What? That's rude also.
Yeah, where did they come from? Hobbled up to ask if this was the house where Veronica Gutt had lived after the accident. The children said it was and offered her some fruit.
How do they know?
Yeah. Where'd they get the fruit? They just pick it off the tree and like, here, old crone,
she's so
you
hungry.
Want an apple? She told them that she had known their great-grandmother as well. And
so she's dead.
Probably. And had tolled the bell in St. Joder's Chapel after their grandfather's 4 sisters drowned in the Awasser, a nearby river. It seemed only yesterday that she and her brother Sigrist suspected the worst. As night came on, a man dressed in white and carrying a lamp came to the chapel, a sign that the bell was about to toll for someone. But when her brother went over, he couldn't see anyone, either nearby or far off. And this really disturbed him. In the morning, they heard the tragic news, and the death bell tolled for some time. Thanking them and giving them all best wishes, the old woman went on her way. She just randomly showed up to tell her story.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Between 4 and 5 o'clock, they lit a fire in the ground floor area to heat a kettle. And at about 7 o'clock, the maid kitchen lit the kitchen range to prepare supper. Suddenly it became light in the chimney, and looking upwards, she saw coming down it an object shaped like a sugar loaf, giving off lots of light blue or little blue flames.
What is a sugar loaf?
I don't know. It's like maybe a sweetbread.
Maybe. That sounds nice. I'm getting really hungry.
I'll have a sugar loaf. Thanks. I'll take one.
I'd like one sugar loaf.
This object disintegrated into the chimney, and as it did so, it doused the fire with a great deal of water. However, a piece also fell into the adjoining chimney to the ground floor, just where Edward at that moment was scraping suet off the kettle. Both he and the maid simultaneously cried out, "The chimney's on fire!" Edward found the kettle and the maid her jacket covered with 1,000 sharp little flames that a moment ago had seemed to dissolve into water. At all this, they lost their heads completely. And when Frau Joller returned about 8:30 p.m., she found them in the annex outside weeping with terror.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the poor maid almost burned up. Later, I heard from a relation in Germany that on the very same day, he and his whole family had experienced a similar inexplicable incident. A strong knocking had started up in a nearby room, repeating several times and so loudly that the landlord came by to find out what was causing such a racket. However, most careful search produced not a trace of cause. Similar incidents were also said to have occurred in other houses. The reprimand that I delivered the following morning, as I mentioned earlier, at least meant that nothing more was said about it in my presence.
Ugh, I don't like him.
No, it's not nice. Oh my God, we're only to Tuesday, the 19th of August. This guy's a Wendy. I don't know how many. Oh, we're only 20. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just as I was arriving home on the following Tuesday, my wife called down from the corridor for me to come and listen to a peculiar knocking on the wall. I went somewhat reluctantly. God, this hysterical woman.
He's the worst.
And heard from the pantry back wall a repeated rapping of 10 to 12 peculiar blows that speeded up towards the end, as if someone was tapping nervously on a door with his finger, demanding instant admission. Let me in! Let me in! The rappings were repeated many times after short pauses. Putting my ear to the wall, I found the precise location of the sounds, but then realized they frequently moved.
Ugh.
I assumed it must be a living creature, such as a rat, and hit the wall to frighten it away. Instead, it replied more than once with the same tapping sound, ending with one or two more powerful blows, as if with a fist. Yeah, that ain't a rat.
Not a mouse tapping.
I had a candle brought. Went into the little room and searched it with the greatest care to try to find some trace of the disturbing agency. While I was doing so, the rappings continued as before, and my investigation remained without result. So blah, 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 blah. So, after I got out Zuska's family prayer book from my bookshelf and read out the chapter on the power of superstition, straight away there began a knocking on the living room floor in the same manner as before, and it frequently interrupted my reading, although I tried firmly but in vain to continue. It's like, I'm just going to keep reading and maybe it'll go away. Now and again there was a strong blow. Did I think this too was a rat? My children could not resist asking. Was that a rat too?
Yeah.
Dad?
I love
that a rat? Was that a rat? Good for you, children.
Yes, you'd be so frustrated
You
being
would.
them.
Then there was a knock on the living room door. The first time this had happened, as if someone was outside demanding admittance. Convinced that someone was play acting a ghost, I took a candle and a sharp knife and proceeded to the ground floor, where I made a careful search. I knew all the rooms like the back of my hand, especially the cellar beneath the living room and all the containers stored there. While I was investigating, the knocking went on above me, but without my being able to discover the cause, I repeated the search, first with light and then without it, creeping around quietly, but could not find anything amiss in the slightest apart from the noise of the knocking. As it was now becoming somewhat quieter, I told my children to say their prayers and go to bed. The two oldest boys, Robert and Edward, went to their bedroom above the living room, while the other children, still very much afraid, all went together into the big chamber, where the maid would watch over them. My wife and I went to bed, but hardly had we arrived when a frightened cry came from the chamber. It was the children complaining of a loud noise coming from their bed. Apart from the two oldest boys who had gone to sleep, the entire family was now gathered in the big chamber. After a moment, I sat on the edge of the bed. The tapping began again in the west corner of the room, came nearer and nearer, then thumped with strong and heavy blows on the floorboard and the bedstead, and then on the chair standing right next to me. I quickly struck a light, searched everywhere in vain, and found all the doors and windows closed. A longer pause followed. I put the candle out and sat down on the footboard of the bedstead. I don't know what any of this crap
You
is.
got to think how dark it is there because there's no electricity,
Yes.
right? The
Yeah,
electricity.
no.
So
And
when
he
you
kept
put that,
lighting a light.
and when you
so.
put that candle out, it's just
Yeah.
they're in the pitch black.
So anyways, this continued for a long time. Then as it got closer to midnight, things got quieter. So Wednesday, August 20th, the dim began around 6 o'clock in the morning and spread all over the house. It started underneath the living room door. So all that, this just continues and continues and continues. I'm not going to keep, because I don't even know where we're going with this. So he's just investigating and trying to figure out where it's coming from. He knows there's got to be like a rational, explanation. So he went and stood outside with his family observed from inside for a long time in vain. Eventually, there were such mighty thumps on the door between the bedroom and the kitchen that each time, being made of soft pine wood, it visibly bent.
Oh.
At around 10 o'clock, I went and stood by my bedroom door and gently pulled back the bolt so that the door was only just held on the latch. My wife stood with the boy some 22 paces behind me in such a position that when the door opened, she could see the kitchen window in the background, whilst I could only see the kitchen wall. After a little while, the door was so powerfully struck that it flew open and hit the wall.
Oh my gosh.
In that moment, I was certain of it, something dark. Although I couldn't make out its shape precisely against the dim background, it shot like lightning from the door to the side of the chimney. Rushing after it before I could say a word, my wife and son called out that they had just clearly seen a dark brown half arm bone dart back from the door. And their assertions were so quick and simultaneous, there could be no doubt that this apparition had passed in front of them. I had always held to the biblical saying that spirits lack flesh and bone, but this crippled it. I made a stringent search of the chimney, but found it empty with no mark of fallen soot or any other clue. So everyone saw something here.
And it looked like an actual person.
Yes. Blah, 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 blah.
I don't like that.
Finally, I called on my oldest sister to find out if perhaps earlier, unknown to me, something similar had occurred in the house. She was shocked by the phenomena and declared she had never heard of anything of this kind before. Meanwhile, the housemaid engaged with her chores in the kitchen and was constantly flying into their living room. One time she claimed she had just at that moment clearly heard someone coming down the stairs, and 3 times she heard a deep voice groaning, "Have pity on me." But when she looked, she saw no one. It's probably her. God, have pity on me.
Ghost of all
Doing your dishes and cleaning the freaking shoes.
Have pity.
Like, clean your own shoes, too. Come on now.
It's the time, It's so gross.
And Febreze them yourself, please. They stink. Meanwhile, our tenant's wife also came by. As I was carrying on my search with the blows pounding over me strong, he just keeps looking.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
So
ain't
what
gonna
do you expect to
Mel
see?
Choir, you're not gonna find it. It's ghosts.
Oh my God. Right.
So anyway, she came, blah. Everyone was becoming increasingly frightened and asked me, as the Episcopal Commissioner Needsberger was away just then, to let a local priest be told of it. I assented readily, as I knew the old man to be as richly endowed with scientific understanding as with experience, and no less as a mystical visionary. The priest was kind enough to accept the invitation in the afternoon. I told him the whole story. He said nothing like that had happened to him in his whole life. He observed the phenomenon closely and at length, but ended up likewise unable to shed any light on the problem. He was no expert, he pointed out. He thought the best thing would be for knowledgeable men to carry out a thorough investigation. But it should be done only with extreme care, he advised, and the family should be as discreet as possible so that the noises should not become public. He then gave the house a customary blessing and left. As evening came on, the racket started up violently and only subsided around 10 p.m. It then occurred to me to see what I could find on the subject in my library. and I got down a dusty college text on experimental physics by Professor Siebert in Munich, but without finding a key to the riddle. All the time I kept hoping for a quiet end to these goings-ons. Thursday, the 21st of August, so every day. The disturbances began in the early morning, high level of intensity, la la la. This was court day, and I had to leave for work because I had a lot of business to attend to. Before I'd finished at court, one of my children came rushing to call me home, as the noise had become so terrible that everyone had fled. I finished up quickly and hurried home. I had planned to notify Herr Kaiser, the head of local canton authority. By the time, he was on his way to England. Okay. At home, I found my entire family outside in the open air. I wasn't afraid. Fear has seldom troubled me in my life. And went inside, finding the disturbances repeating at intervals of between 3 and 5 minutes. Blows on the floor were so violent, it was as though a wooden mallet was being swung with the strength of a powerful arm, causing the living room table to spring into the air, displacing objects.
Ugh.
The massive nutwood door of the living room burst open and slammed shut again with great force. There was a blow from the kitchen. So just constant banging. I just can't even imagine. This is ridiculous.
You'd have to move.
So this was starting to attract more and more attention in the neighborhood. I investigated the matter again with as much coolness as possible. Tested yeah. Once when I came in the kitchen, I noticed the bottles, glasses, and vessels on the table being struck as if with a metal instrument. The blows in different parts of the house followed each other so quickly that if the ghost was a hoax, it would have had to involve at least 4 to 5 people. Seized by the apprehension that the whole unexplained business could soon damage the house, if not utterly destroy it. Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like it could definitely cause it.
Yeah,
I sent for Counselor H. Zimmerman, an old family friend who soon appeared and was astonished. We agreed to call in Dr. K. von Deschwaden, a scientifically educated man. He came, together with the court president, Odermatt, and Judge Schallberger, as well as the master builder, Aloy Amstead, and the art teacher, Odermatt. They got like a whole posse. All of them convinced themselves of the extraordinary racket that was going on, although as dusk fell, it fell off somewhat. Attempts were made to arrive at a physical cause, and a great number of hypotheses were put forward. Volcanism, galvanism, electricity, and so on. Among other things, it was thought that the asphalt terrace floor might be conducting an electrical current, but on closer reflection, nothing provided the slightest clues to the origins. So, they don't know. They don't know any more than he does. So, all this stuff keeps happening. More and more people are being called in. Among them, the head of the provincial government, Franz Zelga, who lived in the neighborhood. The racket was again observed and investigated, how the doors wrenched open and slammed shut. Blah, 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 blah. After a while, Dr. Christian arrived too, and soon had an opportunity to witness everything. At this time, Edward, coming through the front door, saw in the kitchen a white form, like a little hand waving, at which he passed out. Poor Edward, just can't handle this.
Me too.
Send Edward to boarding school or something. He's tired of passing out. But sprang up after a while and stumbled into the living room to tell us what he had seen. In the afternoon, the Episcopal commissioner saw and heard the phenomena, as also did the priest for a second time. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, everyone's saying stuff. So, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I'm just going to try to fast forward here. So, this just all continues basically through August. Today, so August 27th, today the racketing began around 9:30 a.m. All the knocking. The state had raised no kind of investigation. It was only late in the evening when the disturbances had stopped that it showed signs of making a start. After a short interview, I was tasked with providing a written report about the goings-ons, which I undertook to do at once. And then, this would have been around 8 o'clock, I was told to leave the house immediately with those members of my family who still remain. So someone's, the state is finally stepping in and investigating this. I obeyed without demur, despite having 4 trials to prepare for the following day. It's like I've still got to work. I'm so busy. And the inconvenience of being separated from my office and my books. Yet at the same time, I was convinced that what I failed so completely to get to the bottom of would similarly elude these gentlemen. The police guard was replaced by another, which I had no doubt would minutely examine every corner of the house, but without uncovering any suspicions that might lead to the cause of this extraordinary phenomenon. By now, the affair had now got to the stage where it was not just the daily talk of the locality, but had become a national scandal. So they're all being made fun of.
That's so sad.
It really is. The public wants explanations for every detail and finds it too readily superstition, skepticism, exaggeration, speculation, all jostle with each other. Woe betide anyone unlucky enough to get mixed up in such a thing. He will be shown no mercy, thrown as prey to the raging monster, and neither his good family name nor spotless reputation will save him from the maws of the ravening beast. It was just like the heated passions in my years of political campaigning, when enemies would stick their heads up like vermin after a warm spring rain. It might sound exaggerated, but I was made to feel like a criminal, as much among my immediate circle as in the country as a whole. So then comes September. There were some proceedings. I don't know. The tapping continued. It's just the stuff never lets up. So this is going on and on through September. One of his neighbors vouched for things that were going on. But it didn't matter. People continued to harass them, I guess.
That's so rude.
So, I don't know. It's so much. His this is going on and on and on.
He wrote well, it's good he documented all of that.
So I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. So finally, in October, with the contents of the house all packed up, the children were pelted with chunks of suet from the chimney. Finally, they were driven from the upper chambers with bits of wood, stone, and nuts. As I went around the house closing up, so they finally we out.
We're leaving.
They packed up, but even as they're packing up and trying to leave, things are being thrown at them.
So rude.
So so the house was closed up after our departure, and was only now in this spring of 1863 let out again. So far, however, without any of the phenomena appearing to have returned since our departure, I and my family have been spared any of this kind of persecution.
Oh my gosh.
So it just went on for months till they finally were just driven from their home. They had to leave.
It's so sad and scary to think that can happen to you.
What
if you don't have options to leave?
Yeah,
you're just screwed.
You really are.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome. Now my shoulders hurt. So tense.
I saw you rubbing them. Okay, I'm going to talk about the St. Augustine Lighthouse. We haven't done this, have we?
I don't think so.
This is, I'm pretty sure, too, from Ghost Hunters. I remember this episode very clearly because they actually catch a real ghost on camera on this episode. So, I don't know if Ghost Hunters is streaming, but maybe it is on Discovery Plus. I should look.
Yeah,
anyway,
it sure does.
The Ghost of the St. Augustine Lighthouse. This is in Florida, by the way. So this is from ghostcitytours.com, ghostandgravestones.com, and staugustinelighthouse.org.
All very official.
Yes, they're all about St. Augustine Lighthouse. On the coast of Florida, where the Amato and Matazans rivers spill out into the unforgiving waters of the Atlantic, stands one of America's oldest and most haunted structures, the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Standing 164 feet tall, nestled on the northern edge of Anastasia Island since the mid-1500s, this lone sentry has seen its fair share of history, for better or worse, from the colonialization of the Americas to the 100-Year War, to the birth of a nation and its subsequent divide. The St. Augustine Lighthouse has stood watch year after year through plagues and power struggles. You may not see it at first, but it's there. Looking up, its twisted black and white striped base, capped with a blood-red crown, you can almost sense it, that something's off. But it isn't until you've run your fingers along its walls that the walls are made of a mixture of limestone and broken shells, that you really feel it. What the centuries and the salt have carved out like ancient runes. It holds memories.
I love a lighthouse.
I don't think I've ever been to one. They're cool.
So, I don't know. That would be I would love to live
Be creepy.
like next to it. You know, like own a piece of land that has a lighthouse on it. That would be cool.
Not in it, though.
No, not in it. It's too round. I need a corner.
I need a corner
to go hide in.
Be in. On the ground floor living quarters, where so many lighthouse keepers have laid their heads over the years, the raw, almost sickly sweet smell of a freshly lit cigar can be detected, subtle beneath the ocean air. Remnants of a different time when men huddled around wood-burning stoves and waited out the storms, praying that no lives would be lost on their watch. Inside the lighthouse proper, climbing the tall, spiraling staircase, because that's where you see the ghost in that episode.
I remember that episode.
They lean over the edge.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. The sudden quiet is almost welcome until a new sound emerges. The bell-like ringing of a little girl's laughter. It starts at the top of the stairs, high above your head, and works its way down until it is silenced abruptly.
Why? Why is it silenced abruptly?
Yeah, and
too?
why
That's
is it coming
scary.
down? It's like, you're just down there like, don't come down. Don't come down here.
Stay.
I'm naked.
Stay up at the top of the spiral staircase.
In the red room at the very top, the beacon itself sits like a glaring glass eye, seeing through time to the world that was before. You step out onto the catwalk. Nope. Taking in Anastasia Island and the enormity of the sea beyond, it feels like you could be one of those lone lighthouse keepers on duty, eyes on the horizon. That is until you see her, a shadow of a woman in the corner of your eye, holding onto the railing and leaning out into the open air, until she isn't. You too grip the railing, white knuckle, looking out over the trees to the water beyond. So, what, did she jump?
Where'd she go? Or just disappeared, just vanished? Or is this the
Weird.
ghost of someone who jumped? Is that what you're asking?
Maybe we'll get there. I'm not exactly sure because I haven't read this. Like all hauntings, the spirits that roam the grounds of the St. Augustine Lighthouse didn't just appear from nothing. Over the hundreds of years that the structure has stood, many people have come and gone, lived and died, and even a few have remained. The sightings that have been recorded on Anastasia Island have roots that go deep into the history of the lighthouse, much of which is now known to us. For instance, it may be tempting to disagree the lingering odor of cigars, even despite the site being smoke-free. But for anyone who's ever smelled it, or has even seen the too tall, shadowy figure that often accompanies it, they will tell you that the sense of fear and foreboding in the air lingers long after the cigar has faded away. Locals and lighthouse employees refer to this specter as the man, and he is often seen dressed in a blue jacket and mariner's cap, walking his route up and down the spiral staircase or looking down from the catwalk above. Ooh. Because of his tall, thin frame, some believe he is the ghost of William Russell, a protective and dutiful lighthouse keeper from the 1850s, while others point to Joseph Adrew, who fell from the top of a scaffolding in 1859 while putting on a fresh coat of paint. Ugh. And who can forget the children's laughter that bubbles up from thin air and moves across the grounds from the caretaker's home to the top of the lighthouse itself. While children weren't uncommon on Anastasia Island, especially in more recent years, there were only so many children who've had a reason to stay. In 1872, the lighthouse was under construction, overseen by a man who stayed on the island with his wife and 2 daughters while the project was underway. One afternoon, while Pitty's daughters, that's the man, and a few of their friends were playing near the lighthouse, tragedy struck and the island was changed forever. This is probably going to be sad. Prepare yourself. There was a rail cart that the construction crew used to transport supplies from the nearby pier to the lighthouse, and it had become a part of the girls' favorite game, pretending they were Spanish pirates moving their hoarded treasure to a secret location, as kids do.
Yeah.
Only one day, while rolling near the cliff's edge, the rail cart came off its tracks, sending the young girls down into the water below. Oh my God.
Eek.
Some of them were rescued in time, but unfortunately both of Mr. Pitty's daughters were lost to the sea. So sad.
That is sad.
If anything can be said, it's that the children now get to play long after dark. We know because employees of the St. Augustine Lighthouse still hear their giggling ringing out in the night and have been known to find the dirty child-sized footprints on the floor the next morning.
Ooh. I am glad they're giggling.
Yeah,
though.
not
That's good.
screaming or
Yeah,
crying. Yeah. Which leaves us with one last vestige of the lighthouse's history and perhaps one of the most unnerving, the woman on the catwalk. Okay, here we go. Maria Mester de los Dolores stands out for more reasons than just her recent ghostly sightings. In 1859, she became not only the first woman to serve in the U.S. Coast Guard, way to go, but also the first Hispanic American woman to command a federal shore installation.
Double way to go.
Yeah, the St. Augustine Lighthouse. Kick ass.
Go, Maria.
And this is in 1859. That's crazy. I mean, like, that's...
So some good things
You
were
couldn't even
happening
vote.
back then.
Couldn't even vote.
Yeah.
Couldn't even loan land, probably, or anything. Her appointment came after her husband, the formerly mentioned caretaker, Joseph Andrew, met his fateful end. Oh, that's sad. So they were married. Maria was heartbroken, left on Anastasia Island to follow in the very same footsteps her husband had once walked, and even was known to stand on the edge of the catwalk looking down to where her husband's body had once lain. She can still be found there on occasion, leaning over the railing and imagining what those last few seconds of Joseph's life had been like. So she didn't fall or jump.
No, that was her spot.
Yeah, that's super sad. So there's a ton of history here. I'm going to go on to another one and see if we hear anything else about the ghosts. Because, I mean, history's great and all, but, like...
We're here for the ghosts.
We're here for ghosts. So this one goes into a little more detail. This is from staugustinelighthhouse.org. Let's see here. Because this is an article about the Pity sisters themselves. But there's, like, some more... Okay, so we moved on. Blah, blah. Okay, so the three Pity sisters were Mary, 15, Eliza, 13, and Carrie, 4. Okay. On July 10th, we're going back to them dying, which is horrifying, but there's like a part here that I'm just like, ugh. On July 10th, 1873, the three Pity sisters, Mary, 15, Eliza, 13, and Carrie, 4, along with an unknown African-American girl, 10.
Oh, she had a name.
Right. Whose father may have worked on the site, were riding in the cart as normal. So hopefully then maybe she was the one that was rescued. Oh, no. Nope.
Oh.
The wooden board that stopped the cart from going into the water was not in place. So, excuse me, what? Someone take that off? The cart carrying the young girls flipped into the water, trapping the girls underneath. Oh, we didn't get that before.
Well, I bet, though, it was probably super heavy.
Oh, my God.
It must have been big, too.
I
Because
would
I guess
imagine.
in my head, I was thinking... I don't know, like the size of this table.
Yeah, but probably way
But
big
if it was
to
used
carry.
to haul supplies, building supplies.
Yeah,
I'm
and they're
sure
all
it was...
4 in there, and they're pretty old. I mean, Mr. Dan Sessions, a young African-American worker, witnessed the tragic event and raced to the water. When he reached the cart, using all his strength, he lifted it from atop the girls. But by this time, 3 of the 4 had drowned. The only survivor was the youngest, Carrie. In the days after the accident, a construction site as well as the town shut down for the funerals of the girls. Following the funeral, the Pity family returned to Maine to lay their daughters to rest in their hometown. Staff researchers had not yet been able to find the final resting place of the young African-American girl. Because you don't know her name.
Yeah.
So how would you find her?
But I hope she got a proper burial.
Yes.
At least. Jerks.
Let's see here. In the 145 years since the accident, strange occurrences have been repeatedly attributed to the spirit of the girls. So one story involves a relief lighthouse keeper. We need the day off and you just show up.
Substitute.
Right. Living in the home in the 1950s, he reported hearing footsteps upstairs. He went to investigate, but no one was there. The head keeper at the time was James Pippin. He served from 1953 to 1955 and was the last keeper to live at the lighthouse. He initially lived in the keeper's house. Okay, cool. In the keeper's house, as all the previous keepers had done, but he moved to the much smaller lookout building, swearing that the big house was haunted and he would not stay another night in it.
Well,
I
don't blame you.
My gosh. In 55, the lighthouse lamp was fully automated. Nice. And so, no one had to stay there. But they did, the United States Coast Guard replaced lighthouse keepers with a position called lamplighter. The local lamplighter had all the duties of a light keeper, but did not live on site. Nice. As a result, the keeper's house was rented out for a while. Okay. A local man who crafted leather goods rented the property during the 60s. He tells a story of waking up one night with a small girl standing by his bed. As he blinked, she disappeared. Ugh. In the 70s, after standing empty for many years, the keeper's house burned under mysterious circumstances, gutting the home and leaving only the basement and a few charred timbers. Okay. blah, blah, blah. So then some people bought it and they're renovating it. During the renovation, construction workers and some volunteers reported numerous unexplained events in the home. The basement was a particularly active area for ghostly encounters. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the only original part of it left.
Makes sense.
The spirits of the girls enjoyed playing hide and seek, sometimes including unsuspecting people. Well, yeah, I mean, they're not like, hello, would you like to play hide and seek? One night in the dark lighthouse.
Is anyone really suspecting that they're going to be chased by some ghost girls?
Right. And one night in the dark lighthouse tower, a lone staff member, was closing up for the night. He heard giggling at the top of the tower. Thinking that he had left someone up there, he returned to the top to find it empty. As he began to head down, he heard the same giggles below him. Oh my God. Descending the bottom, he once again found no one there. Was it just the wind? Does the wind giggle?
Never just the wind.
Does the wind giggle? Another evening, a female guest on a Dark of the Moon tour, I don't know what that is, but sounds fun.
Like Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd, what's up?
Was standing on the first step of the metal lighthouse staircase. When she took her first step to climb the tower, she found her shoelace tied to the staircase. Ugh!
Dang.
Whether it was a ghost or her companion playing a trick, we cannot say.
That's rude. They could break her neck. That is not a fun
You
prank.
would notice someone going underneath you to tie your shoelace.
I would think.
Unless it's like pitch black, but that's creepy.
And you have like some super long shoelaces.
Yeah, it's not safe. And really mean friends. On another tour, a guide found a group of young women in the basement of the keeper's home. One of the young women rented an EMF meter to measure electrical activity caused by spirits. The young woman holding the meter asked the girls if they wanted to play hide and seek. The meter spiked. The woman wandered the basement, searching for the hiding girls, finally finding meter activity under the spiral staircase leading to the main floor. Excitedly, she said she found them and asked if they wanted to play again. Like before, the meter spiked, and once again the young woman searched the basement for the girls, and after several minutes found electrical energy near the children's play table. Okay, please stop. That's like not okay. The girls sometimes appear in fully formed apparitions. Several years ago during the day, a guest was exploring the maritime hammock trails. I don't know what that is. And came upon...
Is it a trail of hammocks? Because that's the kind of trail I'll go hiking on.
You just try a new hammock every 5 steps.
Yes, I'm down. But I'll make a reservation for one, please.
Oh, this is creepy. And came upon a young girl in a Victorian outfit sitting on a bench reading a book. As she began to ask the girl a question, another group came from the opposite direction. Distracted by the group, the woman looked away for a moment and turned back to find the little girl gone. In a similar instance, a woman on a ghost tour approached another woman to compliment her daughter's behavior on the tour. Confused, the woman said, "I don't have a daughter." And the other woman told her that a little girl had been standing by her most of the evening. There were no children on the tour.
Oh. Well, who was she?
Oh my God.
Mystery.
So the Dark of the Moon tours are paranormal tours that you can do in the tower. So we should totally do that. That place is creepy.
Add that to the list of things we keep saying we should do, and we'll probably never get around to.
Oh my gosh, y'all. Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah, we love you.
We love you. Goodbye.